Smith. I'm the National Register Coordinator at the State Historic Preservation Office. It's a mouthful, we call it SHPO. But my job is to help facilitate National Register nominations through the listing process. So we work with local governments, historical societies, property owners to help get properties listed. We also work really closely with the Tax Credit Office, and that is Paul Porter. He'll be speaking after me. So we'll start with the National Register program. What is it? It is an official list of significant places. It was established in 1966 through the National Historic Preservation Act, and it can be a building, a district, a piece of sculpture, or a site.
Merrimack Ferry.
Yeah, it's a
Merrimack,
range.
right here, Merrimack.
Oh, nice. But it's properties that can be listed at a local, state, and national level that have historic significance. Listing is an honorific designation. It can help protect a property from a state or federal funded activity. You can put a plaque on your property to show that you have a historically significant building. You can also add signage that highlights the historic district, which is also really great marketing. So how are properties evaluated? The Park Service established a set of criteria to help determine this. A is the association with an event, a significant event, or patterns of event like the history of education, or historic trends such as prominence with trade and commerce, which this building is significant under. B is the association with significant people. They could be politicians or people who were very active in the founding of a town. And then you have C, which is significance for architecture, and that's when you see really high style, really beautiful historic buildings. And then D is centered around archaeology. They're properties that have the potential to yield significant information. But to convey one or more of these criteria, the property must have integrity. And that means that it has to be able to show those historic materials, be within a historic setting. So properties can be listed individually, such as a house or an individual building, or as a part of a district. The Park Service describes this as a significant concentration of buildings that are historically united. Going backwards. A district is visually and architecturally distinctive area that exhibits cohesion in the contrast to the outside area. So within a historic district, you have contributors, which are the older buildings that retain integrity, that have those materials, and you have non-contributors, and those are typically newer buildings, or they could be older buildings that have been significantly altered, so they don't retain those original materials. So here you have a linear historic district. It is an area that is the best concentration of a historic period of buildings and maintain good integrity. So typically a historic district map labels your contributors and non-contributors. Here, this is an older map and it shows pivotal buildings. And you'll see how these are the ones that are outlined in dark and how they anchor the historic district. One thing to note is that SHPO confirms all historic districts in Wisconsin, and we try not to have any gaps, such as large parking lots in those cases. But an example of a linear historic district is the Southside Baraboo Historic District, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So here are some examples of downtown buildings that retain integrity. You'll see a lot of them with the second floors. They just are perfect, right? They take you back to the 1800s. But we can't expect that to happen, especially as building uses change, and it's fine to have altered ground floor storefronts. They can still be considered contributors. So just to be clear, it's not always a simple linear historic district on a main street. Here we have boundaries that zigzag around a central courthouse. It focuses on the development around governmental and commercial functions. So every district is different, and this should look familiar because we're staring at one right now, right? And just so y'all are aware, you can also have residential historic districts. So this is a Frostwords historic district in Monona. And it started out with just this original subdivision, and then they added additions over time. But because of the period of development, pre-war and post-war with the same developer, it encompassed one larger area. So residential historic districts are a thing. So here are the two historic districts that we're here to talk about today. The Downtown Historic District that we're staring at, it has 75 contributing buildings, and this is the potential Southside Historic District. Now this was called out in a 1988 survey, so it's been a while. Some things have changed along Ash Street. But it is a good cohesion of buildings, even though it spans across the Baraboo River. Because the survey is so old, a consultant would come in, they would resurvey, they do building-specific property research to find out about when it was built, who built it, what alterations happened to it, in order to determine whether it's a contributor or a non-contributor. So how do you list a property or a historic district? Initial consultation with SHPO is key. Paul Walter has been all over that with us. But there's already been proof of significance through the 1988 survey. This is already established. So next steps is hiring a consultant to do that research that I mentioned. When you prepare a National Register nomination, it is pretty lengthy document. You're providing history of every single building that is within the historic district. So we have qualified consultants that Paul is very familiar with, and they do that individual research. It is a daunting process. It can take over a year, start to finish. That's why it's important to have a qualified consultant. But then you get in the queue to be listed on the state register, and then after that it goes to the Park Service, where it's officially listed on the National Register. So what does it mean to be listed? Are there limitations? All the examples I'm about to show you will show that the property owner really does have a choice of what they want to do to the building. But we're going to step through some popular misconceptions just so you have a full understanding of the National Register program. If my property is listed, I must open it to the public. This is false. This is your property. You get to do what you want to do. Sometimes you have historic tours in downtown to help promote the businesses. You don't have to open it to the public if you don't want to. If my property is listed, I may not paint my house a color scheme that I like. The state and federal government does not care. You could paint it a rainbow. It's really local laws that care about paint colors, and I believe Baraboo does not care about that. If my property is listed, I cannot change anything. This is false. You can do whatever you want. And if your property is a contributor with the historic district, you can talk to Paul about how you can get some money from the state and federal government to help fix it up. Any building 50 years or older is eligible for listing in the National Register or the State Register. This is false. Your property has to have historic significance. So the 4 criteria that I mentioned earlier, it must meet those, it must justify those set of criteria, at least one of them. Properties listed in the National Register require review by a local government or historic preservation landmarks commission. This is also false. This only comes down to local laws. Again, the state and federal government is not involved with this. They only are if you're facilitating a tax credit process, and that's just to make sure you maintain the historicity of your building and maintain some of those key features. So the last slide brought up a hot topic that we can dig into a little more. What is the difference between local versus state and federal designation? The state and federal regulatory actions, such as road widenings, have to look at state and National Register properties. So that's one of the areas where it helps protect your building to make sure it maintains that historic setting and feel. An income producing property must be listed on the state and National Register in order to receive tax credits. In case you're curious, Paul's gonna go into it more, but if you had a residential property, it only has to be eligible for the National Register. Pulling a permit for work on a locally designated property would draw a red flag for local review if you had a local ordinance, but you don't, so you guys are good to go.
We do, it's just
But it's
kinda,
weak.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, but it is. So, if you're asking yourself why list the property, bragging rights, it's an honor. It really brings pride to your community. You have these historic buildings. You have such an amazing history. We're sitting in the oldest bank in the state. That's amazing. And it's a great way to market your town too, to bring people in so that they're shopping in your stores, they're buying your products. It's really an economic revenue that goes back into your community's pockets. So we are all proud of our buildings, but maintenance and repairs can add up. So the joy of property ownership is not maintenance, as we know. So I'm sure you're really here today to listen from Paul. He's gonna tell you all about the tax credit program and how you can benefit off of it. But before we do that, I just wanna go ahead and put our contact information up here so you know how to get a hold of us. We're in Madison on the UW campus. You can visit our website. There's a slew of information, facts about the National Register program, learn more about researching your property if you wanna do more genealogy. There's also websites with plenty of pages on the tax credit program, so we encourage you to visit that. And I'll let you listen to Paul.
Question back here.
Oh yeah, any questions?
Just to clarify, a downtown right now is a historic district, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You have this historic district right now is established, yes. So you can go ahead and take advantage of tax credits if you're a contributor.
Right, so the contributing buildings have already been vetted as
Yes.
contributing buildings, so we wouldn't need to go through that. If somebody wanted to do that, they don't need to go through that process.
It's already established. Paul will go into the specifics of how you apply for the tax credits and how to go through that.
So what
But-
you were talking about was like if we wanted to, if someone wanted to apply for a district for the
South
Ash
side.
Street, south side.
That's
okay.
right,
That
yeah.
would be an additional designation.
Correct.
If they decided to do that. Okay.
Yeah. So it'll just be another historic district in town that can take advantage of this.
You had a
And that would
question?
have to come from the building owners down there?
I'm sorry?
That would have to come from those building owners down there that desire to be part of a historic district?
Correct. We want to make sure that they want to be a part of this program and they are on board with it, because we don't want to go through this year-long process and then they'll sit there and say, well, I oppose this historic district. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, to help educate and make sure people are informed of the program and what it really has to offer.
Are the non-contributing buildings within the downtown historic area eligible for these tax credits, or do they have to get?
You have to be a contributor
contributed.
in order to take advantage of the tax credits. But that doesn't mean that you could remove some of the alterations to the building. and help restore some of those features, and then you could be considered a contributor.
If it's an older building, you know, if it's
Right.
the business center on the square, they're never gonna qualify, cause it's a newer
Maybe
building.
200
Correct.
years from now.
Yeah, maybe 200 years.
Yeah.
Like 40,
I mean,
like 4 more. 'cause-
Oh,
50 years is usual, our benchmark of, so we'll say 50.
And just for historical reference, cause I wasn't here, was bid the driving force between or was it the county for the historic designation in our current downtown?
It was actually the State Historical Society that said, hey, Baraboo, you're the largest small town downtown that is not a historic district, we will pay for it.
Wow,
And
perfect.
it was tens of thousands of dollars, so
Okay.
thank you to WHS for
Yeah.
finally getting the downtown on the National Register so you can take advantage.
Yeah, y'all are really fortunate because not every town has something like this. My town doesn't, and I wish they did. Almost all of their commercial buildings are altered or gone. Any more questions about the National Register?
For residential,
Yes.
is that a long process to get onto the National Register there?
It'll be quicker because you're only researching one building. So you still have to hire a consultant and fill out who will prepare the forms, and then you get in the queue because we have already a list of properties that are waiting to be listed as well.
There's also the preliminary form, so you don't waste time, you know, doing a full-blown nomination. There's
Yeah.
a preliminary form you can submit and then kind of get a wink, wink, like, yes, we believe this would be eligible for the National
Yeah.
Register.
So if you are interested, if you think you do have a historic house, what you can do is go to our website, and there's a search bar at the top, type in National Register questionnaire, and that is the form that Paul was referring to, and you just fill out basic history about your building, when it was built, if there are any alterations. It's just a couple page form, so it's not very, it won't take you too long.
But approximately, what's it cost for a consultant to do that?
It ranges if you hire a larger firm or a single operator. It can be a few $1,000s, anywhere from 2 to 5, I would say, for an individual property. And they also, as a part of the listing process, we have a review board who reviews. These are qualified professionals in the field, and they review all the nominations. They meet 4 times a year. And that's when it's listed on the state register. So there is a timeline.
Is there a way, if you're already on the registry, to lose that designation, whether it be through alterations or, you know, fire damage, or how would that process?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are fires, there are situations. At our last review board, we had to delist a property because it no longer existed. But that's not something that we place in the forefront of our to-do list. Our goal is to help list as many places on the state and national register to help out the property owners. But if you do make a lot of alterations to your contributing building, and you apply for tax credits, Paul will tell you it's no longer a contributor because it's been so severely altered. So we do look at the properties when they come through the tax credit process.
Kind of follows on from that, but say we work to get a building designated, they sell, a new owner comes in and doesn't want to be designated.
It's already designated.
Okay, so you can't take that removed. So if
No.
we work as a unit to protect these things, people sell, developer says, comes in and says, let's knock
Yep.
it down, you say,
Oh, they can still
Well,
knock it down?
the property owner can still tear it down.
okay.
It's a part of this program. It's really important for property owners to know this is your property. You can do whatever you want to. We just want to help you facilitate to help you maintain your building and maintain historic buildings, right? So if a developer wants to tear down a building, they certainly can, but I'll tell you, educated developers, they want to keep that building so they know they're going to get 40% tax credits. That's a huge incentive.
And can churches be listed? I know they don't necessarily need a tax credit sometimes.
Yes,
but
they
bragging
absolutely,
rights.
absolutely, they can be listed and they can take advantage of the state tax credit. So even nonprofits can do that. What they do is they sell their credits to developers and they use that,
Okay.
yeah.
That happened with the Al Theater.
Yeah.
Do you maintain any sort of list of, like vendors that you recommend for restoration or for maintenance projects?
We absolutely do. Paul is the master of that list because he knows these vendors quite well.
Okay.
So if you're looking for a specific window restoration company, he can help provide some that are within this area. Anything else? I'm sure there'll be more questions after Paul comes in. Take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today to share with you about tax credits, because this is actually like the coolest job in the SHPO office besides the National Register, because I get to play with the buildings and help folks restore them and see their vision come to life on the buildings in front of them. So, okay, so what is the tax credit? It differs from a tax deduction. The deduction lowers the amount of income subject to taxation. And then the tax credit lowers the amount of tax owed. So it's a dollar for dollar reduction. And I like this cartoon here because everybody feels like this at tax time. So we do have 3 programs available. We've got the 20% federal incentive program for historic properties that are income producing. If you qualify for the federal, you're automatically enrolled in the 20% state tax credit program. So combining those two together, you get 40% back on your investment in the property, which is huge and makes it affordable for folks to do these things. On the homeowner program for qualifying properties, you get 25% back on your tax credits.
You get more if it's your house in that picture.
Thought that looked familiar.
Well, I wanted to use some local resources, you know, so that, you know, be like, oh yeah, okay, I know that place. So.
If anybody wants to help move this weekend.
I just did that a month ago. And I'm
Yeah,
still
but-
unpacking.
But he's moving into that house, so.
Oh. Well, if there's work to be done, get in touch with
No,
me.
not at all.
All right, well, okay, I wanted to show you the spot from our website where you can navigate to get to us. You go to the website at wisconsinhistory.org, go to the last tile on the right for homes and properties, and then you can look up your property. If you click that, it'll show the next screen, and in the search bar right here, this is where you can type in your address to find out if your home has been surveyed and is in our AHI database. Now, the database does have the whole list of everything that's been surveyed, but it doesn't necessarily just limit itself to buildings that are already listed in the National Register, but it just means that these buildings have been looked at and evaluated. Some of them have been evaluated for their age and possible significance for listing in the National Register. Okay, so is my building a certified historic structure? So the certified historic structure is a building that's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, or is listed as the contributing building in the district. And if the answer is yes, then you can apply for the 20% federal tax credit program. And then if the answer is no, then you can find out how you can get listed on the National Register, which Elizabeth just explained to you how that works. So, okay, what are the qualifications to get your building listed? Or, excuse me, for use the federal tax credit. Sorry, not enough coffee yet. Your building needs to be the certified historic structure, and that's a process through the National Park Service where we send in the paperwork to do that. You also have to have the minimum investment into it, which I'll get to that in a bit. And then all work must meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, and I'll also be explaining that a little bit further. But here's a really cool building on a before and after. This is the E.R. Barron building in La Crosse, and you can see this picture from 1985 before rehabilitation. It had gray paint all over it. The insides were not in great shape, and so then they stripped all the paint off of the brick, restored, put windows back in that matched the original designs, and rehabbed the whole interior. So the whole building is back into service. It's generating income, and it's also helping the downtown district bring in tourism. So, what is the federal investment? So your project expenditures or your adjusted basis value needs to be at least $5,000 or whichever is greater. So how do you figure out your adjusted basis? You take what you paid for the property, and then you subtract the land value at the time of purchase. Then you add in, then you either take out the depreciation that you've taken on your income taxes, and then if you've done improvements like replacing the furnace and the water heater and putting a roof on it, and then when you get to that final number, that's what your adjusted basis is. So you need to spend at least that on the rehabilitation to qualify for the federal program. And then again, the work must meet the standards, which I will also get to in a little bit here. So for the state tax credits, if you're going to do a state-only project, your eligible expenses, your project size needs to be at least $50,000 or greater, and then the work needs to meet the standards. And there is a $3.5 million cap per parcel, but you would have to hit about $17 million to reach that cap, and most people don't get that far, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you qualify for the federal program, you're automatically enrolled in the state program, so you don't have to worry about this $50,000. So here's another building that's just got a interesting story. This is the Libby Brothers building in Evansville. You can see before it had an enclosed storefront on it, and they put in a storefront that was more compatible to the historic character of the building. And the inside, they took out the drop ceilings and fixed up all the walls and restored the tin ceiling, and now you can see what it looks like inside now. So it's now a really nice, welcoming space, and again, it's generating income for the downtown businesses there. So, if you want to learn more about how do you interpret the standards, as I was talking about the Secretary of the Interior standards, a more in-depth look is on the National Park Service website, where Technical Preservation Services is. And I actually use that a lot because within that website, there are preservation bulletins that help you figure out your methodology for whatever you need to repair on your building. So it's very helpful. So, what are your eligible expenses? In the federal program, anything to do with the historic building, your architecture and engineering fees are included, and also your consultant fees are included for helping you through the Part 1 and the Part 2 paperwork and the Part 3 as well. What's not eligible? New construction, like additions, landscaping, parking lots, and then movable equipment like refrigerators, stoves, and then also furniture. But otherwise, anything that is actually permanently attached to the building is eligible for the federal programs. This is the Sun Prairie City Hall before and after. It was actually badly damaged in an explosion a couple of years ago, but they undertook the rehabilitation to restore the building and to put the historic style windows back in, and again made it into a commercial space, and now that's generating income for the downtown as well. Okay, so what's the application process? We can do a site visit, so we can walk through the building together. We can talk about your plans, what you want to do with it, and I can give you some guidance on saving the historic features that are in the building, incorporating them into your overall design, and then also identifying what can be removed that's been infilled later, like drop ceilings, paneling, ugly, gross carpeting, that kind of stuff. So, but with the applications, part one, it certifies that your property is historic. So if you're within a historic district as a contributor, you do need to do the part one, but what you can do is pull the information from the National Register nomination for the description of the building as well as its significance from that nomination and use that. Then part two is where we list out what work you're gonna do to the building. And then also, we have our partner agency, WEDC, that works with you to do all the financial contracts for obtaining your tax credits. I handle all the design aspects, they handle all the money. So, and then once you submit it to our SHPO office, I review it, and then I forward that on to the National Park Service if you're applying for federal credits. And then I forward a copy along with my review of the project onto Washington DC, and it goes to our partner at the National Park Service. And our reviewer for Wisconsin is Liz Petrella. I've known her for about 13 years. She's totally awesome to work with, and she's just she's really great at her job, and she's really good at helping you identify and shape your project so that you'll be able to obtain the tax credits. SHPO usually takes we have a 30-day review period, but depending on how much work is coming in, I can usually get it turned around in 1 to 2 weeks. Now right now, I'm the only tax credit reviewer for the state of Wisconsin. My counterpart left at Christmas time, so I've been covering the whole state since. So, and we are in the hiring process right now, and second interviews are next week, so I'm hoping that one of them will take the job, so I can have a little bit more space in my schedule. NPS, they finally are now fully staffed, and they have been able to bring their review times down to 30 days. Liz does have a 5-state jurisdiction, so she has a lot of work to do all the time. So, but right now she's been able to turn things around about 30 days. And once you get your project approved, you carry out your proposed work. And then as you're going along the project, sometimes you uncover what we call the can of worms. Like when you start to pull the roof off, oh God, the decking and the roof joists are all rotted. We need to change, we need to fix all this. So then you just file an amendment on your project indicating, we found more damage, we need to do this. Or sometimes, as we have been dealing with over the last couple of years of the pandemic, supply chain issues. And we need to figure out a different material to use for an aspect of a project. So once you're done with all the work, the part 3 is where we do all the pictures of all the work that you've done to the building, and then I review that first, and then that goes off to the Park Service for their review, and once it's certified, then you get your tax credits. So, so what's your timeline for figuring this out? So, the research and planning depends on the project and what you're going to do. But bear in mind that once you have your plans put together, the review period, you can anticipate 75 to 90 days in total. SHPO's got 30, and as I said, NPS could be 45 to 60 if Liz is really getting bogged down with work, but right now she's able to get it down to 30. Here's another really cool building. This one is the Barden Store in Kenosha. Before, you can see that it was empty and kind of in derelict condition, but they have restored that building and rehabilitated it, and now the upstairs is used as a banquet hall, and there's retail operations on the first floor, so it's now generating income into that city. So there are, with the state review, there are no fees. On the Park Service end, there are fees for the review, so if you're, and it's based on the size of your project. If your project is between $0 and $79,000, you don't pay a fee. If it's over $80,000 to about 3.85 million, you pay $845 plus 0.15%. If it's over 3.85, then you pay $6,500 in a flat fee, and then you're done.
When is that fee due?
That is for office processing and such.
No, but when is it? Is it after they approve it and then you get charged the
Okay,
fee?
when the Part 2 application goes in, that's when the Park Service will send you a billing for the fees. So here's where the question comes, can I sell or transfer my federal credits? Unfortunately, you can't sell the federal credits, but you can divide the credits into syndication if you bring in partners into your project who can use the tax credits if you don't have a way to use them for yourself. So you can create the partnerships with investors to do that. But this is an IRS issue, so you should consult a tax professional because the structure can be complex, and it's better to have some help with that so that you're not having them knocking on your door wondering where their money is. So I highly recommend that you work with a tax professional to help get that all sorted out for you. Okay, so we also have the homeowner tax credit program, and I picked a couple of resources around town here that you might recognize. The 25% income tax for residential is available for homes that are either in a listed historic district or are individually listed or are individually eligible. Unfortunately, houses that are in a proposed historic district, I can't help you yet with tax credits. The district will have to get listed in order for me to be able to offer you those tax credits. So that's something to consider if you do have a home in a potential district. You might want to talk to your neighbors and see about actually, getting together and getting the district listed. So.
For your residential home, sometimes you can get qualified by proving that your building has historic significance, but it's not on the register, is that correct?
Right, if it's individually eligible,
Right.
then you can apply for the tax credits. So it's either individually eligible or individually listed or listed within a National Register listed historic district. Okay, and of course, if a building is determined eligible for the program and the property contains outbuildings such as a garage or a barn that contributes to the property's significance, they can also qualify for the credits. And again, this one is an interesting one too here because this is a duplex. And if you are owner occupied on one side of it, you can use the homeowner program for yourself. And then for your rental unit side, you can use either the state or the federal program to work on that. So again, work with your tax professional to sort it out, but that is a way to do both your private home and income producing. Your minimum qualifications for the homeowner program: the property must be certified as a historic structure or determined eligible on an individual basis by WHS. Your minimum investment project side is $10,000, and the maximum per application is $40,000. So if you have a large scale budget to do, you can separate that out across several applications. Right now, my record holder is 24 on a guy in Milwaukee who put $2.2 million into restoring a great big mansion on the lake. So, and again, the road needs to meet the standards. Okay, so what's the application process for the homeowner? Again, it's very similar to the national program where your Part 1 certifies that your property is historic. Part 2 certifies the work meets the standards. It's a more simplified application than the federal one, and we've designed it so that the average person can follow along and understand it. You submit it to our office for review. I review it and provide you with an approval or a conditional approval with conditions, and basically those conditions are instructions on how to carry out the work so that it will meet the standards. And then once you're finished with the work, you send me a Part 3 with the photos of what you've done. I review it, and then I provide you with a Part 3 certification, which then you can take to the IRS and file your taxes to get those tax credits. Again, timeline and costs, research and planning, that is strictly up to you in terms of, what is the scope of your project, how much do you need to get done. I do keep contractor resources, and I have them separated up by different categories, like people who can rehab your original windows, you need somebody to help you with stained glass, if you need to have woodworking done to replicate deteriorated features. So there's a lot of different areas where I can help you out, and I have them separated by region of the state. I can't individually recommend anyone on that list because of state law, but I can tell you that these people have a lot of experience in this type of work. So then you get to pick and choose for yourself what contractors you want to do for the work. We don't tell you which contractors to hire.
How can we access that list? Do we call you or is it on your website?
If you send me an email, I can copy and paste it into the email for you and send it on back to you.
Thank you.
So, most historic tax credit projects, painting, repointing your mortar, fixing the wood siding, restoring windows, redoing porches, and gutters and roofs are usually our #1 project, because everything starts with having a dry building, and if your roof is leaking, it's gonna start causing problems everywhere else. So that's our #1 project usually, and then painting and repointing are usually 2 and 3. So, but everything on the outside of the house is eligible. So your foundation, your walls, your windows, your roofs, your chimneys, and your porches are all elements that are eligible for the homeowner program.
Can I ask a quick question? Is solar panels?
That's a maybe. So let me tell you quickly about that. If you want to add solar, you need to make sure that it's either on on the roof slant that is not visible from the public right of way. And if you don't have a roof that's pointing in the right direction to take advantage of the sun, you can also do a freestanding unit in the backyard, as long as it's not visible from the public right of way. But it is counted as one of the utility options, so that's definitely something we can look at. So, wanted to show you some before and afters of some projects as well. This is the Whitney School in Green Bay. This was converted from an abandoned school into senior living apartments. So again, we have a property that wasn't generating any income, and now it is. They also used historic photographs to replicate the original 6/6 windows in the building. And here's some really neat features inside that they incorporated into the final design. As you can see, the drinking fountain area there, and it had that really cool bas-relief mural above it. Okay, so your eligible costs: roofs, windows, chimney work, foundation work, rough plumbing, and rough electrical and mechanical systems. Now, what I mean by rough plumbing and rough electrical, your supply lines, your drains, your waste stacks, your sewer lines, your water mains are all rough plumbing things. Plumbing fixtures and faucets are not eligible because those are up to personal taste. Electrical systems, rough-in is your main service panels, your sub panels, all the wiring, and the junction boxes. But the switches, the outlets, and the light fixtures are not eligible because, again, those are personal taste choices.
Paul, this is on the residential side. Can you explain the commercial side of this as well? Because I think it's a little more inclusive.
Yes, the commercial side, pretty much everything that's not everything that is nailed down to the building is eligible, like your cabinetry, your plumbing fixtures and faucets, and
Even
lights,
down to, like,
switches, and all.
wallpaper.
Yeah, everything except for stuff that can be removed from the building, like restaurant equipment, refrigerators, stoves, and furniture. So that one's more inclusive than the homeowner program. Okay, ineligible things, like refinishing the floors and interior finishing in the house. However, if you have to have walls opened up to access the plumbing or access the electrical, the repairs to the walls in those areas are eligible for tax credits. Additions are not eligible, however, they are reviewable because they need to follow the standards for the design. Kitchen and bathroom modelings, also reviewable, but not eligible except for the rough-in electrical and plumbing work. Also, adding insulation is not an eligible expense either. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. What questions? Okay, hands up.
Just a quick question on the residential tax credit.
Mhm.
How is that given back to the residential owner? Is that a one-time, or, because I know that the other one, for the commercial, is given back to you over 5 years, is that correct? Or am I incorrect on that?
On the homeowner program, you can either take the whole amount
Okay.
on your tax credits for that year. You also have the option of carrying it forward for up to 15 years. So
Okay.
you just use it to offset your tax liability. I saw a hand in the back there.
So easy question, so the list of, kind of qualified contractors to do some of that work, is that available even if you're not gonna go through the tax credit program?
Yes, of
Okay.
course. Yeah, just send me an email and
Okay.
I can provide you with that list.
And then on the commercial side, can you go through again, what was the minimum cost of the project in order to qualify?
Sure. Let me go back up.
Seemed like that was a pretty big number.
Minus the
Okay, there we go. Okay, so you figure out your adjusted basis based on what you paid for the property.
Right.
You subtract your land value at the time of the purchase. You subtract out the depreciation if you've owned the building for more than one tax cycle. And then if you've made any improvements in the interim, then you add that back in. So that's how you figure out your
So-
federal.
So let's say I just go out and I buy a building this afternoon,
Uh-huh,
$200,000.
right.
And then if I wanna take advantage of the program, then my project costs have to be $200,000 or greater?
If you paid $200,000 for the building, you subtract out your land
Let's say it was
value.
$10,000 for the land.
Okay, so that gives you down to
190.
190,000. Yeah, so then that would be your adjusted basis,
So-
because obviously you haven't owned the
Right,
building long
right.
enough to depreciate it on your taxes
Right.
or do any
So
repairs.
my total project cost has to be bigger than 190,000 to qualify.
Right.
Okay.
So if you buy a building that's in rough shape for a low amount of money, you know, that's a great place to start. Or if you've owned a building more long-term and have been able to depreciate it a lot on your taxes, that also helps get your adjusted basis down. But, you know, I do have several people that, you know, the adjusted basis is a little high for them, so they just work with the state-only tax credits. And your minimum project size is 50,000, and of course, these days you can sneeze and spend 50,000 on a building.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any more questions?
Can you explain that,
Or-
when you start working on a building, if something's not there, you will not necessarily be forced to put it back. If you start tinkering with replacement windows, you know, that are of a smaller size, you'll probably be asked to put in a larger size unit, but it can, or the original size unit, but it can be like aluminum clad and stuff, so you're not like necessarily being required to go back to, you know, all wood windows if you start replacing the windows.
Right, I mean, on a commercial building, it's really not practical to put like the second floor windows as all wood, because who wants to get on a ladder to paint that? So, you know, we don't want anybody to break their neck. So yes, you know, there's instances where aluminum clad can be put on the second floor. You know, the Park Service does evaluate each project on a case-by-case basis. If the original windows are present, first and best practice is to try to rehab and save your original windows. But if they are completely rotted through, and you can demonstrate that through photographs, then you can have the window replicated. And more often than not, with a commercial building, it'll be an aluminum clad wood window. The one type of product that you cannot use in a rehab is vinyl windows, except for new additions. Unfortunately, they just don't hold up very well over the long term, so that's why they're not allowed within the program.
If you had small, you know, say somebody put in newer windows and made the unit smaller than the original opening and filled the rest in, if you start tinkering with that opening, would you be required to put in a full-size historic window?
Historic style, but yes, what we would want to do at that point is look at the historic photographs of the building, find out what the original design of the building was, and then, you know, put in the correct scale again on the windows. Any more questions? Don't be shy.